in 30 seconds or less, could you tell us, like, Josh Harper had a lot to do with the creation of this project called Conflict Gypsy. And, after a few years in prison, being a major organizer for the last 15 years on a grassroots level, really never making a cent on it. He gets out and he does something, and then two other people get involved and make this project so amazing and groundbreaking that you start archiving grassroots zines. And why did you get involved? And how did this? I'm sure you asked Josh, like, how did this concept come to Josh? Like, why was this important to him?
After Josh got out, he was actually looking with some friends for a full collection of Do or Die, which was an Earth First publication from the UK in the 90s, which was they were humongous, and the scope of what was being written in it was so critical, and it was chronicling so many amazing things that were happening at the time. But unfortunately, through raids and people being in prison, all of these things have gotten lost. So out of that came the idea for Conflict Gypsy. Josh started with a couple other people. A couple of those people couldn't go on with it, and Adam and I were eventually brought in about June last year. And I think the only reason why Josh really brought me in is he saw that I was somewhat similar to what Josh's trajectory of activism. Like, I'm very outspoken. I have no problem with calling people out.
In a respectful way.
In a respectful way. But this is something that's been, Josh's activism as well. And
but I think, just kind of noting on Josh and your work is it's very transformative, and it's not dogmatic.
Yeah.
And you work with so many people, and that's a testament to knowing that, hey, these people do work with others.
Exactly.
And I think that's when you go to a demonstration, there you go again. So I think Josh has really been indirect teacher to a lot of people because he's been around for 15 years, which is fairly long for an activist, a radical activist, because they get burned out so much. And so, like, what's gone on for this 10 years? So, in closing, in short, like, what has Josh taught you that you think is really important?
Josh has really just been a really good mentor. As far as learning how to present oneself, like learning what has come out of the Shack 7 case and the ATA 4 case, and making that distinction between what's justifiable and what's strategic has just been a huge thing that Josh has imparted to me. There's a lot of language, there's a lot of tactics, there's things that we can say and promote that are justifiable. We can rationalize them, we can justify them with our logic, but they may not be the most strategic things. And this movement has to prize what is effective. And a lot of times we have to kind of sacrifice the things that maybe make us feel really good or make us feel like, we're strong and we're so resilient and all these other things, or that we have this projection of force. We're dominant and we're going to overtake and all these things. So for the most part, almost all the Shack people have been really helpful with mentoring me, and that even from them and out of the ATA 4 case, it's been the same message. Like, we need to really stop with the macho rhetoric.
Could
publicly.
you speak to, like, as a white male, able-bodied, right? And I know a lot about you, like being involved in straight edge and stuff. Like, could you speak to some advice? As a young activist, could you give your advice on saying, like, to other activists, young, old, and coming in, like, how can we challenge the patriarchy within us and around us?
That's a really tough question. For the most part, we really need to make space for opposing opinions. You mentioned last night that we need to put ourselves in positions where we are uncomfortable. That's always huge. We need to be intersectional, not just in theory, but also in practice. That's so huge. And coalition building needs to be not just a term, but something we actually do. There's another thing you called out last night. You said if you're not involved in 3 or 4 movements, you're probably not doing enough. And when you take this up against the macho rhetoric, right? Can we coalition build when that's the language we use? For the most part, no. That's language that we use for our own movement, right? And can we get where we need to be with just our own movement? No. So this is what I say when you weigh what's justifiable and what's strategic. When you are focused on being intersectional, when you're focused on coalition building, you have to choose a language that's strategic. It's still the language you believe in. It's still all these amazing things that will fight oppression and domination. But we need to do it together with solidarity and with strength. with strength. And straight edge was gone in the 90s because of that reason, and became this insular, exclusive thing because of that rhetoric. And hopefully with the introduction of critical thought and kind of placing that on a path that is a lot more sustainable and is focused on longevity, coalition building, being intersectional, being an ethical practice, and not just a hyper-individual choice that we accept in North American society.
Alcohol plays a lot in, Kim Socha told me this, is alcohol plays a lot in domestic violence.
Oh, yeah.
And, and that's one reason why Malcolm X, wanted to get it out as well as crack cocaine.
Exactly, yeah. And, even just what we're talking about here, we started on animal issues and we ended up on something completely different, right? That's the beauty of ICAST to me, and that's the beauty of, learning and talking between activists and academics to the point where we don't it's impossible to know, is someone an activist or an academic? You don't know what it's like. Does that person teach or do they not, right? That's really, I think, my goal of my introduction to ICAST is really trying to not only build that bridge, but then get everyone together and destroy around it, so that it becomes really the one function that we all kind of pursue.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.